The Raiders make roster moves ahead of their Week 15 matchup with the Philadelphia Eagles, and head coach Pete Carroll's job status. The rumors and reports, they continue to swirl. That plus more on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for December 10th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcast network. Definitely really proud of that. Also very proud of the fact that this show continues to grow each and every day because of your great support, Raider Nation, and the job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day by way of the YouTube page. So we shout him out. We appreciate him. You can find him on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line for you, 707-654-4693. Your calls and texts will close out the show. Lots of really good feedback, a lot of good texts, a lot of good calls. We'll try to squeeze in as many as possible as we close out today's show. Segment number 2, we'll talk about the quarterbacks. We'll continue the conversation that we had on Tuesday. Geno Smith, we know he's banged up. He left the game on Sunday with a right shoulder issue. Pete Carroll was not ready on Sunday to say if he was going to move forward with Kenny Pickett. He was not ready on Monday to say what was going on with Geno Smith. He said he needed a couple more days to evaluate, and I say that in air quotes. Well, today's a couple more days later. So when we meet with him at the Intermountain Health Performance Center, we'll definitely ask him what the status of Geno Smith is. And I'm not saying he's going to give us a 100% answer. Yeah, he's in or he's out. He'll probably say something to the effect, well, he's going to try to practice and see if he can go or not. So this will probably linger on the rest of the week, but since it's been a couple days, we'll try to get our thoughts and mind wrapped around what the Raiders should do with their quarterback position the last 4 games of the season. So we'll do that in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, and we'll start out with some roster moves that they made official on Tuesday after we tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, go to FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets. Again, that's all season long. So off top, the Raiders made a couple roster moves official. As of Tuesday, they signed cornerback Chigozie Anuzium from the Cardinals practice squad. This is a guy that was an undrafted free agent out of Cal and Colorado State back in 2024. The Commanders actually signed him. Then he ended up on their practice squad, and the Cleveland Browns signed him to their active roster. He played 1 game there in Cleveland, then they waived him in August of 2025. That's where the Cardinals picked him up, ended up on their practice squad, and that's where the Raiders found him and signed him off of as of Tuesday. And so when you sign a guy off another team's practice squad, you have to immediately put them onto your 53-man roster. So he's on the Raiders' active roster. He's played in 1 game in his career. He's 25 years old. So, of course, they had to make room for Chigozie, and the way that they did that is by placing cornerback Kyu Blu Kelly on the reserve injured list. We remember on Sunday he was carted off the field. He tore his patella tendon, so he's out for the season. So you swap one out, you swap one in. I don't think Chigozie is going to be a guy that you're going to see out there locking down one corner spot. He's going to be a guy for depth. You're going to see a lot of Darian Porter. You might see some DeCam Richardson, but expect to see a healthy dose of 26. Darian Porter, the 3rd-round pick out of Iowa State. And like I said, Chigozie Anuzium is there for depth purposes, signed off the Cardinals practice squad. I also wanted to let you hear from Jason Jones from CBS Sports, and he had this report on Sunday following the Raiders' loss to the Denver Broncos, and there's going to be a lot more of this coming up in the next 4 weeks as, you start getting closer to the end of the season and, coaches start losing their jobs, and there's certain coaches and coordinators that are on the come up that might be hot commodities like Ben Johnson was last year. Obviously, the Bears landed him. Mike Vrabel was for the New England Patriots. They ended up landing him. So there's going to be some coordinators that we'll be talking about sooner rather than later if, in fact, the Raiders do move on from head coach Pete Carroll. But this is what Jason Jones had to say Sunday afternoon following the loss to the Denver Broncos about the job status and what he's hearing around the league for head coach Pete Carroll.
I think there's a lot of desire for Pete Carroll to continue coaching. I think that we have seen that for many years. And so I don't think that one bad year in Las Vegas is going to extinguish that flame that lives inside Pete Carroll. However, that's not going to be up to Pete Carroll. That's effectively going to be up to Mark Davis, the owner of the team, and ostensibly, of course, Tom Brady, who is running essentially football operations for this group. Now, I've been told, don't worry about the general manager there, John Spytek, in his first year as GM. He has been considered safe and will continue to be considered safe going into his second year. But is the Pete Carroll project working out? He's already fired 2 coordinators, right? First, a special teams coordinator, and then Chip Kelly, and not just an offensive coordinator, right? But the highest paid offensive coordinator, I think, in NFL history, Chip Kelly, and it only lasted 11 games. Didn't get the quarterback right. This defense isn't playing very well. The offensive line was not figured out and will not be figured out this season. There's claims of nepotism with Pete Carroll bringing in 2 of his sons to be on the coaching staff where they haven't really been successful without their dad as the head coach. And so all of these things can coalesce, can cascade on Pete Carroll. He's been a one-and-done head coach before. It's been a long time. He's had a lot of success since then. But a lot of folks within the NFL would not be surprised if at the end of the season, the Las Vegas Raiders job winds up becoming open.
Sounds like GM John Spytek is safe, and that's something that's been consistent with what we've heard so far. Even going back like a handful of weeks ago, we heard that about GM John Spytek, that he's pretty good with his job status moving forward, but it's the head coach that could be in question. And there's going to be a lot of questions that have to be answered. And the Raiders, I'm sure, are having those conversations right now, especially if they ended up with the number 1 overall pick or they end up in a position to go get their quarterback of the future. They have to decide, is Pete Carroll the right guy to be that quarterback's head coach? Are they going to have the right people in place to develop that quarterback, right? Or do they want to, just go ahead and have a clean break, have a absolute 100%, like just clean start with GM John Spytek, let him bring in his head coach. They'll have a ton of money in the salary cap space where they can go ahead and add plenty of free agents, also have, the number 1 or number 2 overall pick and have a chance to get their franchise quarterback. That could be a very attractive job for someone who's up and coming, a young guy, especially an offensive mind that can help develop a young quarterback, say a Fernando Mendoza or a Dante Moore, or whatever direction the Raiders chose to go. The one thing that they don't want to do is like the Giants did, where they have Brian Daboll in place. They draft Jackson Dart. They get Jackson Dart all used to Daboll's system, and then halfway through the season, they fire him. Or do what the Bears did with Caleb Williams, right? They have Matt Eberflus in place when they could have just had a clean break and hired some other coach to develop Caleb Williams from the jump. Instead, he had to go and learn Eberflus's system and his offensive scheme system, and then have these different coordinators. And then Eberflus gets fired, and now he's got Ben Johnson. Obviously, he's doing well now, but it's just setting the young quarterback up for failure, having to learn multiple systems. So that's something that one of the many discussions that the Raiders will have when they decide what they're going to do with head coach Pete Carroll. But these reports that you're getting, you're going to get a lot more of these between now and the end of the regular season, because again, it's that time of year when you're a 2-11 team and possibly a team that doesn't win another game. That's going to be first and foremost for all these networks, from CBS Sports to ESPN, NFL Network, Fox, whatever you want to call it. They're going to be talking about it. Head coaching vacancies, what jobs they expect to come open by the end of the season. So when the Raiders wrap up that Week 18 game at Allegiant Stadium versus Kansas City, all eyes will be on what's going to happen next. What's the offseason look like? What's going on with head coach Pete Carroll? And maybe we'll get some kind of, definite answer before that. But as of right now, it's just kind of rumors and reports, as the one that Jason Jones put out Sunday afternoon after the Raiders lost to the Denver Broncos. But the one thing we do know, as a matter of fact, the Raiders have Geno Smith under contract for a couple years. They have Kenny Pickett under contract for the rest of the year. They have Aiden O'Connell under contract for the rest of this year and next year. But who should be starting the next 4 games of the regular season to close things out? We'll talk about that, continue that conversation coming up in segment number 2, today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of the great sponsors we have on the show, including Mint Mobile. There's no reason to let big wireless drain your wallet, especially during the holidays. Right now, Mint Mobile is running their best deal of the year. All their unlimited plans are 50% off. That means you can lock in 3, 6, or even 12 months of unlimited premium wireless for just $15 a month. It's the easiest way to take your overpriced phone bill and give it the full Scrooge treatment. I'm all about that. What makes this even better is how simple Mint makes the switch. No contracts, no nonsense, just real savings and real quality service. Setup takes only a few minutes. You can bring your own phone and number without any issues. So turn your expensive wireless present into a huge wireless savings future by switching to Mint. Shop Mint Unlimited plans at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Limited time offer, upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 60 months, or $180 for 12 months plan required. $15 a month equivalent, taxes and fees, initial plan, term only, 35 GB may slow when network is busy, cable device required, availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to talk about the quarterback position. We talked about this on Tuesday's show. Geno Smith, Kenny Pickett, Aiden O'Connell. We know Geno Smith is banged up. We'll find out a little bit later on this afternoon how he's feeling, what he's looking like. We'll ask head coach Pete Carroll those questions, and we'll see what kind of response we get. Then they'll have practice. We'll get an injury report. We'll find out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday status. We'll talk to Pete Carroll again on Friday. Maybe we'll have some clarity about Geno Smith and his job status as far as, if he's going to be playing or not as of Friday. But I doubt we get full clarity today. Again, we'll find out a little bit by the injury report and if he's a full participant, limited, or if he DNPs, does not participate. So that'll be something to pay attention to. But as I mentioned multiple times, as of Sunday, it didn't sound like Pete Carroll was ready to move on from Geno Smith. So I did ask Kirk Morrison, and I mentioned this on Tuesday's show, about the quarterback position and what he thought about Kenny Pickett after seeing what he did for the fourth quarter against the Denver Broncos, going ahead and getting into the end zone, having a nice touchdown pass, 25 yards to Shedrick Jackson. What did he think about Kenny Pickett moving forward as a starting QB?
Well, I think the big thing right now is how healthy will Geno Smith be?
Yeah.
He's been taking a beating, and my partner, Jason Horowitz, reminded me of going into that game. He had been sacked 25 times in the last 4 games.
Wow.
And then I believe yesterday they had, 5 sacks, I believe, the Broncos did. So you kind of add all of those up, and, he's been a quarterback that's been beaten and battered. And so where is he at right now, not only mentally, but just physically? This is a long season. If he's not 100%, I could definitely see going to Kenny. And even if Geno is 70%, I mean, we're talking about a 100% Kenny Pickett available. Hey, it's the time of the year. I'd take 100% quarterback Kenny Pickett. It doesn't hurt us. And I think it also helps, Kenny Pickett. Maybe he sticks around here next season as a backup quarterback. Who knows?
Would you put Aiden O'Connell, or would you put a combination of the two in at any point of the rest of the season, saying there's 4 games left?
To me, I've always felt that this regime has already kind of told you how they felt about Aiden O'Connell. I think that we've seen the way that he had to battle throughout training camp, that he probably wasn't in the team's long-term plans. Then when he got hurt, there was the faith that they went out, and that's why we're talking about Kenny Pickett. They went to go to the 5th-round pick instead of waiting on him and saying, you know what, let's have Cam Miller for a week or two. So I think the organization quietly kind of said how they feel about Aiden O'Connell. Just probably hadn't fit in what we expected from the offense from Chip Kelly, but now I think that's going to be different because we're going to have a different play caller. And at least Greg Olsen does know, Aiden O'Connell a little bit better than maybe anybody else spending time with him. So, it's kind of interesting to see how they play this thing out down the stretch. If Geno's unavailable, do they play both quarterbacks? Do you see what you have, or is it just going to be Kenny Pickett's show if he becomes a starter with Geno Smith being out, possibly?
So you see Kirk refers back to, Geno Smith and his injury and his health. And he said, but 100% Kenny Pickett, I'd rather see out there than a 70% Geno Smith. So that's something to consider. And then a lot of people have talked about Aiden O'Connell and, well, how come Aiden O'Connell lost his backup spot after getting injured? And I thought Kirk brought up a really good point, and I emphasized this on Tuesday as well, but I just wanted you to hear it for yourself. The fact that, he felt like this staff, has kind of told you how they feel about Aiden O'Connell. Whether that's the right answer or not, who knows? But then he also threw in the other caveat, like, well, Chip Kelly's no longer there. Greg Olsen knows Aiden O'Connell, and who knows who can end up being the quarterback, even the backup or the bridge quarterback next year. If they say the Raiders do choose to go and get a Fernando Mendoza or a Dante Moore, are they going to start him right away? Do they need a bridge? Will that be Geno? Look, they're on the hook for $18.5 million for Geno Smith no matter what, right? I mean, if they release him, and that would be fine if they do, I would have no problem with that. I'm sure Raider Nation wouldn't either. It's going to cost them $18.5 million. That's the dead cap hit, right? Kenny Pickett, his contract expires at the end of the season. So if they do like what they see, say he plays the next 4 games, and they like what they see, they'll have to re-sign him to a contract. And then they'll be paying Geno Smith as well. And, oh, by the way, Aiden O'Connell has a year left on his deal. So maybe they try to flip him. Maybe they try to trade him. Who knows? But that's the situation right now when you look at the contracts of the quarterbacks. Also, you have Cam Miller, who you just selected in the 6th round. He's on your practice squad right now. And I think that we all are pretty understandable that it's going to take some while for him to even try to develop before you can really see what you have in him. But to me, and just the guys and the teams that the Raiders are going to be going up against the next 4 weeks, I think it makes more sense for Kenny Pickett. I also think that Aiden O'Connell probably deserves a shot, so it might make sense to have these guys play 2 games each. Say, hey, man, look, we're going to sit Geno down the rest of the season. He's been battered and bruised. He's been sacked so many times. He's beat up, right? You got to give him respect for what he attempted to do, and he very well might be the bridge next year. He might not go anywhere, right? They might decide that they're going to let Kenny Pickett walk. They might decide that Aiden O'Connell's the guy that they're going to trade. They're going to draft the quarterback of the future that they believe he is. You got Cam Miller on the practice squad and Geno Smith's under contract. So maybe they say, hey, this is going to be the bridge quarterback like Russell Wilson was for Jackson Dart. And when they feel comfortable with passing the sticks on to whoever they get, that could be the situation. Again, especially since you're already paying him anyway. He's already under contract, right? So you're already paying him $18.5 million. You know, they could look at it like might as well get something out of him. That's one scenario. But I would have no problem, to be honest, if they went Kenny Pickett for a couple, Aiden O'Connell for a couple, just to see what both these guys look like and what the offenses look like with them running the show. And then I feel like it would be, and I know that they're not worried about the fans, they're not worried about me, they're not worried about anyone, what we're saying, but no one would be able to say, well, this guy, insert name, Kenny Pickett, didn't get an opportunity, or this guy, insert name, Aiden O'Connell, didn't get an opportunity. They both had the same amount of opportunity to play. This is what they showed, and this is what they decided to do moving forward. And with all that being said, when you're talking about Geno, Kenny Pickett, Aiden O'Connell, you also have to throw in the caveat that we talked about in segment number 1. Is Pete Carroll going to be the head coach next year? If Pete Carroll's going to be the head coach, he's probably going to prefer Geno Smith. If he's not, maybe the next head coach will prefer Kenny Pickett or Aiden O'Connell. You know what I mean? Like that's the other scenario. There's a lot of loose ends in this conversation with the Raiders. But just for the present, and we know Pete Carroll's the head coach, and we know they have 4 games left, I would think that Kenny Pickett, Aiden O'Connell, you split it up one way or the other. If you want to give Kenny Pickett 2 games in a row, maybe the Eagles and the Texans, and then give Aiden O'Connell the Giants and the Chiefs, or vice versa, whatever, I'm good with that, right? No matter what, you can go ahead and let them go out there and get their burn. Geno Smith is just so banged up, and we've seen him so much that I don't think that anyone really needs to see any more from him. But I think it's a good conversation. Like I said, I think we'll get a little bit more clarity today of the status, at least the health of Geno Smith, and then it'll come down to what this coaching staff is most comfortable with, right? And as Pete Carroll said on Sunday, that both Aiden O'Connell and Kenny Pickett would be both ready if they need to be. So that's obviously that scenario has played in these guys' head at least a little bit, and it's under consideration. Doesn't mean they're going to act on that consideration, but at least they've thought about it. For sure. So, again, we'll hear from you coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts, your feedback on this situation when it comes to Geno Smith possibly playing the rest of the season, Kenny Pickett maybe getting some burn, maybe all 4 games. Aiden O'Connell, same thing, right? Who would you prefer to see these last 4 games and why? 707-654-4693. We'll hear from you as we close out the show on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that's FanDuel. We know in the NFL, Sundays move fast. So do Mondays and Thursdays, right? One big play, suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're actually reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. So if you see a defense all of a sudden cooking with grease, you see those guys like the Eagles did on Monday night get 7 sacks on Justin Herbert, or you see a guy like Jalen Hurts turning the ball over, thinking, hey, man, this defense is about to take the ball away. Boom, live betting. The best way when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot or a defense tightens up, for you to be in the game. FanDuel lets you jump in that moment. Live spreads, money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as the guys heat up, and you can bet the next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and a whole lot more. It's going to literally keep you locked into every single snap, every drive, every possibility. So you want to be right in the middle of the action all season long. Go to FanDuel.com, place your NFL live bets with FanDuel. The game moves fast, and so can you. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start out with a call from T. Wolvie in Nashville, calling to talk about the Raiders head coach position, and also talks about the Steelers and their consistency. Here's T. Wolvie in Nashville.
What's up, Q? It's Tyler in Nashville, man, otherwise known as T. Wolvie. Just wanted to hit you up, comment on a couple things from the pod today. Man, it got me thinking about the Steelers, and I don't really love to give them their flowers, but the one thing that they have is consistency. and continuity. Three head coaches since 1969. I mean, hell, we've seen that in the last couple of years. So I know we talk about this, and I know it's hard to find, but having some cooler heads prevail and let things play out is something that we desperately need. And obviously, it could come to bite us with Pete because he is older, the oldest coach in the NFL. If the passing of the torch is something that is going for his sons, that's an obvious concern, seeing how the offensive line is played and so on and so forth. But, he has just ages and ages of wisdom, man. And we got to trust the process as far as, spy tech and letting him do his thing. I think if they bring some assistants in and let those guys see what a real offensive line coach looks like, and I don't know how it looks, but, 2 weeks ago I had said, fire Pete, bring Gruden back, the whole deal. And I know that's an emotional response. And since the season's over, I think we just need to look big picture. And we always talk about patience here as Raider fans. And it's tough to have because we just want something to celebrate about on Sundays, or hell, even have close games. But at this point, we're celebrating rookies getting play time. So it's real bad, maybe as bad as it's ever been. But I just want to say, the caller yesterday talking about Tomlin getting fired, which they've never done, fire a head coach, and bringing him on, as attractive as that looks, there's a reason why that works in Pittsburgh and why it doesn't work for us. And that's an organizational thing. So, we just need to have some more patience, and I think it's time. If Pete does get fired, we need a young head coach that's level-headed that can, hopefully spend 20 years with us. Man, wouldn't that be nice? Hell, even 5 years. Just wanted to say that, man, and just give the Steelers their props for having an airtight organization, and it's something that we really need to examine and study and apply it. We'll be all right. It's a bad year, maybe the worst ever, like I said, but we're going to get through it. Raider Nation, stay strong. Q, see you, man.
T. Wolvie, thanks so much for the call. 3 head coaches since 1969 is wild, right? The Raiders have had more than 3 head coaches since they've been in Vegas, and that's 2020. Hell, I've seen more than 3 head coaches since I've been here, and that's 2021. We'll see what happens at the end of the season, right? I think Pete Carroll is going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting to retain his job. And what's going to have to happen, he's probably going to have to win a bunch of games. They only have 4 left, but he's probably going to have to win a couple, which is going to take the Raiders out of position to get that number 1 overall pick, which is probably going to make the fan base even more angry, right? I mean, so maybe he can just get them to play at a competitive level, make every game really close, but they still end up losing. I don't know. I mean, it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't type situation. I don't really know how Pete Carroll goes about it, wins some games, and then holds on to his job. Hell, Antonio Pierce last year won a couple games down the stretch that everybody got angry about, and he still lost his job, right? So it's really going to be tough, I do think, for Pete Carroll to retain that job, but, we'll see what happens. The thing about it is I would love for the Raiders to get to a fact and a point in their coaching cycle that they have with this team where they're in a situation where they have to give an extension to the coach. Right? They haven't given an extension to a head coach since Jack Del Rio. And remember, as soon as he got that contract extension, he got fired the next year. Right? The next year was the 2017 season. He got fired immediately after that. Remember, he walked to the podium and basically let it be known he didn't fire himself, but he basically fired himself. I've been known that I'm not coming back. Right? And that's when John Gruden took over. And obviously Mark Davis gave him the long-term deal. So he wasn't going to go anywhere. The plan was to keep him around for 10 plus years. Obviously, we know how that played out. But the Raiders have not given a head coach a contract extension since Jack Del Rio. Matter of fact, they didn't give a contract extension to Dennis Allen. He got fired. Who was the next coach after that? Was it Jack Del Rio? Jack Del Rio, right? He got the contract extension. John Gruden had the long contract. He got fired. Josh McDaniels, he got fired. Antonio Pierce, he got fired. So in the history of Mark Davis having the team, the only coach that's been extended is Jack Del Rio. That's wild. But again, that's what it is. And remember, when Al passed, Hugh Jackson was the head coach. And then he got fired immediately because everyone thought that was going to be a Hugh Jackson takeover, right? And he was doing too much and was being the de facto GM. And that all led to the Raiders giving up, draft capital for Carson Palmer, which didn't make any sense. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. It's going to make me angry again. So, yeah, you get it. You get the point. Thanks for the call. Appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Montgomery Raider. Hey, Q, I know everyone is in tank season and want to lose out, but there's probably a scenario where fans may want to win. It could turn out that the Chiefs must win against us to make it to the playoffs. If we beat them, then they're out. But if we lose, then we get the number 1 draft pick. It's going to be a divisive Week 18 for the Raider fans. Personally, F the draft pick. If that's the case, just win, baby. Appreciate all you and Ari do for Raider Nation. That's Montgomery Raider. That's kind of what I was talking about on Tuesday's show. There could become a scenario, Week 18, the Chiefs have to win that game at Allegiant Stadium, a place they've never lost, to get into the playoffs. And the Raiders could need to lose that game to solidify that number 1 overall pick. Do the Raiders and does Raider Nation want to see a win and make sure the Chiefs go home and don't make the playoffs? Or would Raider Nation rather see them lose and get that number 1 overall pick? I say it all the time. I never root for a team to lose. I never root for the Raiders to lose, but I get it. I get it. That'd be a tough pill to swallow if, once again, the Raiders were in position to get a top pick and end up 5, 6, 7, like they more than usual. They usually get that scenario play out like that. So thanks so much for that text. And you do throw out a good scenario. We'll see how it plays out the next 4 weeks. Up next, got a call from Mikey the Barber. He's calling to talk about the Final 4 games and what he's rooting for the rest of the way. Here's Mikey the Barber.
Hey, Q, it's Mikey the Barber here, man. I was listening to a caller, and I've heard a few people say this, that they'll never, ever, 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 never, ever, 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 ever root for the Raiders to lose, which I think is pretty dumb, especially since, we're not a good team, this year. And, we want to secure getting our guy at QB1 for the future. Why would you want to win games to jeopardize that possible number 1 overall pick? It just doesn't make any sense. It's like doing the same thing we've been doing for years and years and years, for decades, like just being in mediocrity hell. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then just signing a free agent quarterback who's older, that sucks. I say all that to say this. I'm rooting for them to lose, and I'm glad that nobody is, in the media that's talking that tank talk, because I have a feeling once they do that, the Raiders will go ahead and start winning games like a bunch of idiots. I'm really hoping that, we can lose out and get that pick just so that we can get our guy. Whoever it is. Hopefully it's Mendoza. I like him, man. And, some people think that he's corny or whatever, but, dude, we need a corny guy at quarterback in Vegas. You know what I'm saying? We need a choir boy at quarterback, for sure. And he's got physical talent. He's got arm strength, tall. He's athletic. So let's do it, man. Just tank, baby.
Big Mike, thanks for the call. Appreciate you. And, again, I don't root for losses. I know the players in the locker room, and in this case, head coach Pete Carroll, nobody's rooting for a loss. But like I said to Montgomery Raider, I get it, right? It's so hard to pick a side. Nobody wants to see their team lose, but you also can't, count on or anticipate being in a position to get that top pick again, right? And not everybody's the Chicago Bears, where they traded the number 1 overall pick to the Carolina Panthers, and then the Carolina Panthers stunk so bad they earned the number 1 pick the next year, and Chicago was right there and ended up with Caleb Williams anyway, and all that extra draft capital. Ideally, that'd be awesome if a team can anticipate that, but you just can't. And you're playing with fate, man, if you do something like that. And usually that kind of thing ends really bad. But Mikey, thanks so much for the call. It's always great to hear from you. Up next, got a text from Tadreese in New Jersey. This will close out the show today. Hey, Q. Tadreese from New Jersey. I remember a text came to the show back in August from another listener from Jersey asking which game you would go to, New England, Washington, or Philadelphia. Raider Nation that live across the country and want to see their team when they come to your area. Get an early season game. This way, there's still hope, even if they lose and the team is like 2-2. I'm so glad I didn't pay for the Eagles game in advance. Wife is a diehard Eagle fan. I would have hated to sit in the freezing cold to see this team. P.S. I took the wife to see the Eagles versus the Rams playoff game last year. She's good. Thanks for all that you do, even in these down years. Just win someday, baby. That's Tadreese in New Jersey. And, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that's when the Raiders have the most hope, and there's the most confidence in the team is early in the season when everything is 0-0. Remember there was a time when they started the season 1-0? Think about that. We're heading into week 15 right now. The Raiders started this season 1-0 with a victory on the road against the Patriots. Oh, by the way, that same Patriots team is riding a 10-game winning streak right now, right? They're the number 1 seed in the AFC right now, and the Raiders beat them week 1. That's wild to think about because they've only won 1 game since then. That was against the Tennessee Titans. every other game they've lost. So, yeah, early in the season, there was a lot of hope with Raider Nation. There was a lot of hope with this team. Players in the locker room fired up. Coach was fired up. Now we're heading into week 15, and we're talking about, will Coach Carroll be back? How many changes will be there? Are they going to get the number 1 overall pick? Do you want to win a game against Kansas City? Like, those are the conversations we're having now. Boy, how the season has worn on Raider Nation and how it's gone south really quickly. Like Amber Thea Harris said on my radio show, it gets late early. It got late early for the Silver and Black. That's going to do it for today's show. We got a call from Raider Mike in Walnut Creek we'll get to coming up tomorrow. We also have the crossover edition where we'll take a look at the Philadelphia Eagles, talk about storylines, matchups, and keys to victory. And I know a lot of Raider Nation's like, don't win. No keys to victory. But that'll come up on tomorrow's show, and then we'll close out the week really strong. So Raider Mike in Walnut Creek will actually get your call on Friday's show. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.